Hi there, Dustin Haisler here, Chief Strategy and Innovation Officer for Government Technology. Let's talk a little bit about what's happening with this generative AI landscape. So, what we like to refer to this point in time is really the post-search era or the beginning of the post-search era. And what I mean by that is think about how you query information today. You'll go to a search engine, you'll search your inbox, you'll gather information, but by running that query, you receive a variety of different results. And then you have to sift through and kind of establish a point of view on what it is you're looking for and extract information from it. When we get into this generative AI landscape, we start to see where we converse with data and we start with a point of view. We start with a summarization or an abstraction of information that we've queried, and then we can go deeper from that. So it's a fundamental shift in the user experience. And of course, with ChatGPT and a lot of the buzz around it, this is definitely something that is trending. And I know many of you are also testing it for a variety of purposes. But for those of you that haven't seen it, I want to dig into this a little bit and kind of show you some of the different approaches to this in the market. Now, what's interesting about this tipping point, and I think this graphic is a great summarization of that point in time that we're at today, is if you look at language and image recognition capabilities historically over time, they've always been subpar to human performance. And so you can see human performance represented by the 0 on this line. But as we start to get into 2020, 2021, there's been fundamental changes in how we train AI. So no longer do we need to have human classifiers, tagging everything associated with this new landscape of generative AI, especially with the image creation dynamics. We can actually have it train itself, which creates a lot of interesting use cases and, of course, some ethical considerations. So what makes this landscape unique today is if you think about, Web 1.0 consumption, Web 2.0 kind of read, write, Web 3.0, and kind of this generative web landscape is hyper contextual experiences based on the user, where every interaction that you have is in a natural, language way. So I think this provides a really unique opportunity to also streamline the government experience. Now, where does generative AI sit kind of in this AI landscape? Well, a lot of different subdomains of artificial intelligence and a lot of developments that have been happening across those from, the general artificial intelligence, machine learning, deep learning, natural language processing. And then generative AI kind of sits in the middle of deep learning and the natural language processing and speech recognition, because there's been some really interesting developments on how we can enable AI to create. That's the generative AI component of this. So let's talk a little bit about what that looks like. So ChatGPT, one that I'll show you here in a little bit, is what is called a GPT, a generative pre-trained transformer that is trained on OpenAI, the company that has assembled this, their large language model. Now, large language models are basically, massive amounts of natural language that has been compiled and put into a large language model for AI to be trained on. And a generative pre-trained transformer is basically a specific large language model that's been pre-trained on a set of text. And that's what ChatGPT is. But that's also why you're seeing a lot of other GPTs emerge on a lot of different domains, people building their own. They're pre-training these engines for generation on top of a language model that they have. It could be their own data. It could be third-party data. There's a variety of different use cases there. So let's talk about what this looks like in practice as we go into ChatGPT. So right now I'm in the ChatGPT GPT 3.5, which is kind of the consumer version of this product. And I'm going to ask it a question around what are the ethical considerations for generative AI in state and local government. And you'll notice I get a pretty rapid response with things that have been pulled from this large language model around bias and discrimination, transparency and accountability, privacy and security, impact on workers, other dynamics, and it kind of gives me a little thing here. Now I could continue to prompt and go deeper here, but I also wanted to show you, this is the 3.5. Now I'm going to open up a new conversation and I'm going to go to GPT-4, which is, really the Cadillac of a lot of the generative AI conversation. So I'm going to ask it the same question, and we're going to watch the details that kind of get extracted from this language model and the reasoning and rationale that it has. And this one's a little bit slower, but it goes a little bit deeper into how it pulls this information together. Again, same type of interaction. Any of these you can double click on, kind of go deeper. I want to look at data privacy and security. Give me 5 things to consider as it relates to that. But this is starting to bring some additional, kind of thoughts into the process that are fascinating that we want to consider as a part of it. And so the rationale and reasoning of GPT-4 is better than GPT 3.5. However, it does create a little bit of a time lag here, as we can see in the response time window. Now, what's interesting about this is this GPT-4 is also available through an API. There's a partnership with Microsoft. And so, there's a number and a flurry of applications that are emerging right now, leveraging this open AI service that's built on GPT-4. And so that is giving all kinds of new capabilities into applications. We've seen companies like Salesforce launch their own GPTs, and we expect many others to follow suit. But as you can see, this one is still going and kind of thinking about some ethical considerations. Same query, but slightly different way that we're approaching that. So now I want to go to another approach in the market, which is Google's. Google has launched something called Google Baird, and this is basically their generative AI approach. It was also recently announced that they're looking at embedding this directly into search. So remember, think about that post-search era where rather than us curating our own information, we're actually starting with a point of view and going deeper and extracting insights from that. So I'm going to get it that same question. What are the ethical considerations for generative AI in state and local government? And we're going to watch how Baird handles that request and what the output of that request is. So let's see what happens here. So here we go. So now this one doesn't type it all out for you, but it kind of gives you the information at one time. It gives us, a summary of that. Here's some ethical considerations in regards to state and local government, transparency, accountability, bias, privacy, safety. So this allows you to, have that. Now you can go deeper if you want to go deeper, just like in ChatGPT. And as we can see, the GPT-4 answer finished, and we had workforce displacement, surveillance, public trust. And let's kind of go back and look at where we started, that 3.5 summary. And, this one gave us 5, different examples that were very good here. But, the level of detail and kind of the thought process and rationale in the GPT-4 was definitely, a little bit more established. In Google, we see, another approach here that also gives us some information. Now let's talk a little bit about Bing. And so, for those of you that are familiar with Microsoft search engine Bing, they have a partnership with OpenAI and have embedded GPT-4 into Microsoft Bing as a part of what they call Bing AI Chat. And so you'll notice that this looks very similar to ChatGPT because it's built on top of that API that they're enabling. The interesting thing about Bing is that you can actually, pick a conversational style as you begin. So if you want it to be precise, balanced, or creative, you can do that. And I'm going to hit it with that same question that we asked. And we're going to see how Bing tackles this one for us. What are the ethical considerations for generative AI in state and local government? So this one will give you a little logic as to what it's doing in the background. It's searching for these ethical considerations. It's looking for generative AI in state and local government. And then it's giving us now a response. Now, the interesting thing about the Bing chat side of this is, this language model is also part of the internet. And so we're starting to see citations here. So on ChatGPT, knowledge was severed from it online in September of 2021, partly to allow for that language model to be refined and to prevent any, of the rogue kind of super hallucinations where AI gets into territories that you don't want it to go. With the ChatGPT plugins that will be emerging, the internet will definitely be an aspect of that. But Bing is kind of one of the first to use that GPT-4 model. But the interesting thing about this is, we get some of the same kind of high-level themes, but we also get citations, which I think is a fascinating, way to kind of look at interacting with the information. Well, where although we start with kind of a point of view and something that we can converse with, we also are able to see some of the underlying logic and kind of go deeper off of that. And then we also get, relevant follow-up questions that we can ask as a part of it. So just a quick look at what is happening in this landscape of generative AI. We're going to continue to track this through the Center for Digital Government and Government Technology. We have a generative AI summit that's coming up and a variety of policy frameworks and kind of go-to guides on how you can make sense of this. This landscape is evolving incredibly rapidly. You're going to see these tools embedded in the productivity tools you do every day. You're going to see it in Slack. You're going to see it in Office. So it is something that we want to consider and kind of look at, what are those guardrails that we need to have in place, but also how can we leverage this technology to augment, the workforce shortages that we have and make our existing employees even more effective and productive at what they do. So we'll keep watching this for you. Would love to hear from your use cases. I'll make sure we put our email into the notes for this, but just wanted to give you a snapshot of what we're seeing today.